Okay. Okay. Special person. Okay. Okay. Um, okay. Thank you. Well, it's really nice to be with you all there in Brazil, and I'm sitting here in Rotterdam in Holland, actually. So it's 8:15 on my side, and it's winter, and it's really cold, and the heating is on and everything. And I see you in summer clothes, so I like that. Well, I'm Miriam Rasch. Very happy to be talking to you about our project we did with the INC, the Digital Publishing Toolkit. So I want to tell a little bit about what we did and what came out of it, and then I hope to maybe talk a little bit with you, and if you have questions or if we can discuss some things, that would be really nice. And I want to try something with sharing my screen. Oh, and if someone can't hear me, please just wave or something. Because then I can show you some stuff that we made. So I work with the Institute of Network Cultures, and now you will see yourself probably. Yes. So I work with the Institute. Does this work? Okay, great. I work with the Institute of Network Cultures, and we're part of the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences. And we're a little research institute, and we do projects on digital media and the internet and social media, and also a lot with publishing. And what we do next to the research projects is that we are also a little publisher of our own. So we have our own publications, which we put out about 3 or 4 each year. And that's mainly my job to make that all happen. And here are the latest ones we made. And what we try to do is to put them out in all these different formats. And that's also what the research project with the toolkit was about. So we really wanted for ourselves to make the transition to digital publishing while still retaining also our print books, because the books you see here, for example, they are also they've been printed. So we did a print run of around 1,500 copies, and we sent them around all over the world. They are all free and Creative Commons licensed. So yeah, we just want as many people as possible to read them. And sometimes people want print, and other times they want a PDF, and others still want an EPUB. So in our 2-year research project, which was the Digital Publishing Toolkit, we also set out to make that happen. So I'll try to show you some things from this project. I'll tell you a little bit about why we did this research, with whom, what was the focus, And it turned out our focus was really on workflows. So changing our workflow towards digital publishing. And there were two really important outcomes for us. And they were mostly about the tools we use. So we turned to Markdown as an editing tool, and we also use Pandoc now, and I will tell a little bit more about that. And then to end up, it would be nice, I think, to look in the future, and maybe we can also discuss that then. So this is the separate website for the project, the Digital Publishing Toolkit. And here, yes, you can find everything about the whole project. And what I can show you. What we did in the 2 years is we worked together with publishers, and they are publishers in the arts and design sector. So we are part of a University of Applied Sciences, and that means we also have to do applied research, which is really cool, I think, because it means we work with partners who are really in the field, in the business of, in this case, publishing. So we have this consortium of, well, many people actually, but the core of them are these arts and design publishers. And why do we work with them on this research? Well, I guess because it's really hard, especially for that group in the publishing industries, to make this transition to electronic publishing. And I think it's really easy to understand why, because when you want to publish a novel as an ebook, you mostly have text, or in most cases, so it's not that hard to transfer the text into a PDF or an EPUB or whatever. But when you are making arts and design books, it's of course all about the art and the design. So there are a lot of illustrations and layout and fonts that are really special. The design of the book is in itself important. So it's much harder for publishers to make these books digital, because it's not just about the text. So we wanted to work with them on this problem. And also because these publishers are mostly small and independent, so they don't have a really big research and development department or a lot of people with technical skills. They're mostly quite traditional and really good at what they do, namely making paper books, which look really beautiful. But how can they then find the time and the money to, well, to make the next step to ebooks? So that was really the core of our consortium. And then we worked next to the publishers with designers and developers. And the project was instigated in collaboration with the Rotterdam University of Applied Science. And what we did is we made little subgroups, project groups, each with one publisher, one editor, one designer, one developer, and really set about just working towards making ebooks, seeing where were the problems, what was difficult, which tools did we need, etc. And in some sort of experimental way of working. And it was really also the idea that we would have some ebooks in the end, and we did, so that's nice. Another thing you can find here is we did some events with a lot of interesting speakers, and it was all filmed and all blogged about, so you can find it on the website. But also what is important is that we didn't only work with arts and design in mind, but also with an open source ideal. So everything we put out is open source, and we really tried to work with as many open source tools as we could. So everything that has been developed in the project is free to use by everyone and to develop further and to experiment with. And that can be found here on GitHub. I don't know if you know GitHub. I didn't before the project started, but it's a place especially used by programmers and computer developers to share code and to work on code. But you can also use it as a way to share documents and collaborate on documents. So on this place on the internet, all our tools and little programs and also our publications can be found. Well, that's more general about the Toolkit project, but I already mentioned that we had, maybe I can turn you back on. Yes, we had the little subgroups, and the Institute of Network Cultures, we published books ourselves, and we were one of the subgroups as well. So I was in the group working with Silvio Lorusso, he's a designer, and Michael Murtaugh is a developer, and Joost Kiert and Kimmy Spreeuwenberg. And we set out to find out for ourselves as the INC how we could also make the transition towards digital publishing. Because before, with the books we made, it was also kind of a traditional workflow. I'm gonna go back to the screen. So for example, these books, I think everyone who is in publishing knows what the traditional workflow would be. You start working with an author who sends in a manuscript in Microsoft Word, and you have a lot of going about with corrections and reviewing and commenting. And then finally, you have a Word file that is your final document. And that goes off to the designer who makes the layout in InDesign, Adobe InDesign. There's a lot of corrections going on in that phase as well. And then in the end, the InDesign is turned into a certified PDF, which can go to the printer, and then you have your print book. So that is what we always did, except that we also put the PDF online. So when we started with the project, this book, the Unlike Us Reader, was just out as a print book. And we thought, okay, let's just try and make this into an ebook, an EPUB. And it turned out that it was really hard because we had our whole workflow going from the Word to the printed book. And then in the end, we wanted to add this ebook. But how do you get the final text with all the last corrections, which is in the final InDesign file, into the ebook? That was really a big problem. And now, 2 years later, fortunately, there are some tools which make it easier to go from InDesign to EPUB, but it just goes to show that the developments go really quickly. But when we were doing this, it was really hard. So we really thought, if we want to go on producing EPUBs next to our print books and the PDF, then we need to change something earlier in the workflow. So we started focusing in our own research on workflows. And that is how our kind of focus came about, which was on hybrid workflows for hybrid publishing. So hybrid publishing means that you want to have both the print book still, the PDF, the EPUB, but maybe also a website or whatever else you can think about. And that means that you have to take care of reaching that end product really from the beginning when you start working on the text and everything else that you have. Because maybe we thought we could also do something with all this video material from conferences, for instance, or blogs which are written also about conferences or by interns or whatever. there are a lot of material that isn't used when making a traditional print book. So the Unlike Us reader was really our first kind of case study. And this is a collection of essays about social media. So it's more text-based and not as much arts and design-based, but it also already posed a lot of issues for us. So we started working on transforming our workflow in such a way that it would be possible to, in the end, at the same time, reach the print, the PDF, and the EPUB all at once. So not adding the ebook all totally at the end. And I already mentioned that the two most important things that we came about was that we had to change the tools we work with. Because as I described in the traditional workflow, you are working with this author in Microsoft Word, which is, of course, not an open source tool, and it can really be an annoying tool. I guess everyone knows about that. The designer is working in InDesign. It's also not open and can also be very annoying. So we wanted to get rid of these tools as much as possible. And what we came up with was that we would mainly work with Markdown. And I don't know if Markdown is familiar, but it's really an easy, I'll show you. This is an example of a Markdown file. So it's really an easy text editor, which kind of uses plain text, the same as you have in your email, but it can do almost anything you would want. And by that, I mean making bold, italics, but also footnotes, hyperlinks, etc. And even more, you can very easily insert links to images, to videos, well, whatever you would want in your ebook. So I must say we did decide that we are not going to use this for the editing and the rewriting phase, which is going on with the authors, but this is our central format, which we chose also to store our documents in. So in the traditional workflow, you have this problem of corrections going on. And even in the final stages, when something is almost going to the printer, you still have the small corrections. And these, in this case, should all be done in the Markdown file. So you have really one final central place where you keep your text. And as you see, it's easy to work with, which was also really important when it comes to the more traditional arts and design publishers, because they're maybe not as technical as the developers, but they also have to work with this. So that is the Markdown file. And by the way, here you see the introduction to the toolkit manual. So that is the handbook that will be published as the result of our 2-year project. And unfortunately, it had a little bit of a delay, so it's not there yet, but it will be available before the end of the year. Next to Markdown, an important tool we use is Pandoc. And this is also something I had never heard about before, but it's an absolutely amazing open source tool, which is used to convert documents from one thing in something else. So, for example, you can convert your Word document into Markdown, and it leaves everything intact, like the headers, like bolds, italics, footnotes, hyperlinks, etc. And usually, Pandoc has to be used in the command line. So we really got into kind of the nerdy technical stuff because a lot of editors or publishers, at least, do not work with the command line. It's really for developers and computer programmers. So we decided to make it more open and available to, to the people we work with, that we make this user interface. So Michael, who was in our subgroup, he made this user interface to use Pandoc. And you can see it's available from our website, pandoc.networkcultures.org. And what it does, so if you want to go towards this markdown file, is you can import your Word file, click on one button, and then you have your markdown file. You can also choose HTML, plain text, or even a file format which you can then import into InDesign. So it's really a very easy way to convert all your files, and that makes it easy to also work with this markdown format. And also this is, as I said, open source, and it's available on the GitHub. So you don't need to invest a lot of money to really take these steps towards making ebooks possible. And then in the meanwhile, we were still just publishing our books at the Institute of Network Cultures. So for example, these two books, which you see here, the last two network notebooks, they were made during the project, and they were really some kind of test case. So I was the editor for these two volumes, and I really tried to implement our new workflow, and it was really hard. So it didn't work really right from the beginning, but we learned a lot from that. But in the end, we have the print book. Let me see if this works. So this book, it's about selfies and Instagram. It's really nice. So we have the print book, which can be ordered. We have the PDF, which is online. This is the PDF. But we also have an EPUB. And moreover, as was the aim of our project, we have an EPUB which has the design features of the print book implemented. So here is the EPUB, which I've opened in my iBooks program. And as you can see, it has its own font. It has the background image. And I will just go through it. You can see the footnote numbers are in red. So that's really a design feature. And here start the images, which are really nice and colorful. And of course, further on, you will also see the selfies that the whole book is about. So we were really proud of this accomplishment. And if you want to download it, it's available on our website. So let's see. So in the end, we came up with our ebooks and print books, really using these flexible tools, working with the markdown file, which is also very flexible. So what is really the part of the message of the hybrid workflow is that you should work towards really having flexible files and flexible tools, which are flexible enough to make all this different output possible. And what is nice is that once you start working with these flexible tools and formats, then a lot of other things become possible. I already mentioned that we organize a lot of conferences, so we also have a lot of pictures and video footage, blogs about talks that are given there. So it would be really nice if you could kind of incorporate that in the book. And one of the examples of something that came out of the project without us thinking about it beforehand was the ebook trailer. So about here you can see the trailer for the book I just showed, about the selfies. And this is simply all the material that is in the ebook is automatically distracted from that and put into a GIF image. So it's really, really simple, but it's kind of an extra feature which you get once you start making ebooks. So it's really nice. I think it's as simple as it is, it's really impressive in its coolness or something. Maybe it's also because of the selfies in there. So we really found out that, maybe I should take this away because it's a bit distracting. We really found out that once you start to open up your workflow and really open up your concept of the book and the material, then a lot of other things start happening in your product, but also in your own mind, which is really nice. So that is really, in short, I think, what we did with the INC group in the Toolkit project. And I already mentioned shortly the publication. So everything can be found here on the website, but also there will be really a publication where all the results that came out of the different subgroups are summarized and put together. And it's written like a manual, really a how-to for hybrid publishing in the arts. So I showed you a little bit of the introduction. It's aimed towards, firstly, arts and design publishers, but I think everyone who wants to really try for him or herself to get started with making ebooks can really learn a lot from what is there, because we describe step by step the steps you have to take or can take, questions to ask, possibilities, dangers, etc. It's maybe funny to mention that the production of this manual was in itself kind of a test case, because we wrote it with, well, you can see all the names here, with some 10 people. So it was really also a project in collaborative writing, and it's kind of also due to that setup that we have a delay, because it was really not easy to write together in a group and make it into a full-fledged publication. But now we are finally getting there. So before the end of the year, this will be available, and of course in PDF, in EPUB, and in print. So everyone can get a free copy by that time. So what are we going to do next? At the Institute of Network Cultures, of course, we keep on going with making our own books. I'll just turn this off again. We'll keep on going making our own books, and really what I have learned as the publications manager, as I then call myself, is that it's very hard to actually start implementing this new workflow. So that will be something that will be on my list for next year. And fortunately, I have two students coming to help me to really start implementing this workflow, because I think everyone will recognize when I say that once you have finished your research, then you think, okay, now we're done and back to normal life. But of course, the whole research was pointed towards changing our normal life. So we're really going to try to make this happen with storing our files in Markdown, converting them with the Pandoc interface, etc. And what I would also like to hear from you who are sitting there is questions which you think are the most important at this moment in this field, what is of great interest. And of course, I have a couple of things I find very interesting, but maybe it's something we can also talk about. What we are going to do at the INC, and please get in touch when you think you can contribute to that. Is, for example, we have a project which will be about criticism, and this is a slide in Dutch. It's from a different presentation, but it's a totally different sector than like the traditional publishers, but also I think a sector which is really in danger, to put it a bit harshly. But we want to make a project about the future of criticism, and starting off again with the notion of hybrid workflows. Can we adapt this hybridity to criticism? And this is just an example of what I have done myself with one book. I don't know if he's as popular in Brazil as he is here in Western Europe, by a Norwegian writer called Knausgaard. And here you see I wrote a blog, I made a video, I made a print essay, and wrote an online review. So for me, this is really an example of how hybrid criticism could take form, except that the way I did it in this case is totally inefficient, because I did it all separate from each other, and I should also change the workflow in this practice. So that will be an interesting research also, I think. Then, of course, there's the big question of revenue and business models. We've learned really during the project that all the publishers are very eager to learn more about publishing and or business models. And of course, the ebook has really disrupted also the business of publishing. So, but we're not really a business research institute, so we don't feel we are the experts to talk about that. But it's a huge topic, I think. And to just show this as an example of another topic that we are interested in the INC, it's social reading. So when you think about the whole line of books and publishing, there's the writer who is writing, which is also very interesting. There's the publisher who publishes the book. And then there's, of course, the public. So all the readers who are reading the book and doing the stuff with the book that wasn't possible before digital media. So this is something from last month. When you read an ebook on your Amazon Kindle and you make a highlight, Amazon knows you make the highlight. So they can extract all this data from all the Kindles and all the ebooks and make lists like this. So the most popular passages in books ever, according to Kindle data. And that's just a big data question. I think it's also really interesting to look at, for example, the way people talk about books on social media, or how they share books and stuff like that. So this is a little bit my take on the future of what we will do, and what I think is more of a vision of the future of what it could mean if we all go along the way of digital publishing is that maybe the whole idea of the book will change. And I myself have a background in literature and philosophy, so I'm really a big book lover, and I have a lot of books which you can't see because they're on that side of the room. And I think I will always have books in my life, but especially when it comes to nonfiction or theory books, I think the whole concept of a book like the Unlike Us reader, it's gone. The Unlike Us reader, which was this collection of essays bound together literally into one tome, which is not to be separated. Maybe that will be gone in less than 10 years. Because if you look at all the possibilities which open up when you really transfer into this electronic medium, it's huge what you can do. And this is an example of, well, more or less a mock-up of a website which shows what could be possible, the personal EPUB search. So this would be a system where all this material that I mentioned is loaded in. So you have the text essays, you have all the images, you have pictures from conferences, you have videos from conferences, you have blogs, whatever you can think about. And then when you search the system, in this case for gender, you get everything that is tagged with that word, which mentions the word or has something to do with it. And in the ideal case, you would click on the button and compile your own personal EPUB with all INC material or any other publisher's material concerning gender. And is that a book? I don't know, but I think it's really fascinating and exciting. So I hope to have my little share in making such things possible. So that was it. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Hello. Yes. What other kinds, for example? Hmm. Yeah.
This hybrid workflow.
Yes, that's a good question. That also really relates, I think, to this future of the book and the future of the text and what is a text and what is a book. But I think, um, at least if I look at the people we have worked with and also our own practice at the INC, um, that is really something that is far in the future for most of these publishers, because maybe technically a lot is already possible, but that really demands a whole new way of writing. And then I think the author will almost become like a programmer. Because I think in the Netherlands, we do see stuff like this happening with poets, so in poetry. So, but of course there it's also really about how the meanings of the words, how the words interact with each other. That was also already always a big question in poetry. And now with electronic possibilities, the poets can make it happen on the screen and make the interaction with the reader. But I think that calls for such a change in your mindset when you are an author. I don't see that happening really soon, at least in theory or in essay writing. But
Well, yeah, I know that's hard, but I think why to have an e-book if it's like the old books? I also love books. I love to lay down in my hammock and read my books, write in them, fight with the author, and things like that. So why to have an e-book that will be so constrained, just if it does not have the potential that the computer brings to it? So this is my question, okay? It's something that I have thinking in my life as a computer artist.
Yeah, well, of course, you can define the potential of the computer already in different ways. I mean, I think if I only the fact that I can search within an ebook for me is really important to sometimes read an ebook and not a print book. And I think especially in research, in academia, I mean that's the computer potential as well. The very simple fact that you can search within an ebook, or for example, make notes which you can then export, and then you have a document with notes that you can search. I mean, these are just really small things which are hardly working very well up till now. So yeah, for us, I think it's more important to kind of first concentrate on these smaller like tweaks before moving into really like electronic literature and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Miriam. I have a background on printing books as a print
Yes.
book, so I understand how difficult it is to change the ways people produce the books. I believe it's a hard work you had there. I was wondering about the collaborative work. While you were speaking, you said something about the last experiences, and when you said the collaborative working, and you said that was something huge, a little more tricky that you thought at
Yes.
first. But what do you think about it? The collaborative work, bringing it to this new workflow you're proposing.
Well, I think there's a huge potential in this collaborative working. I mean, I was a little bit, well, I shouldn't be too negative also about our experience, because in the end we have a beautiful book coming out. It was just, it's also really something that you have to learn also with each other, how to go about making a book with a group of 10 people. I mean, people have been making books on their own for hundreds of years, so it's something you have to learn anew how to make that happen. But I do think what really came out of this project is that you can't make it happen if you don't use the right tools. So one thing is for sure, I think, with Microsoft Word, you will not be writing a book together with 10 people. I mean,
I
it's just
see.
impossible. So, so first you have to have the right tools. And I think, I mean, Google Docs is also just a good tool that everybody uses. It's just a shame that it's Google and they have everything
Okay.
you make in there. Um, but there are other open source tools which are comparable. And I think the combination of Markdown and GitHub really worked for us in that sense, because you have the Markdown format, which is really the plain text format. So um, you don't have all these issues going on with people having a different like working in Word 2000 and someone else works in Word 2007, and then all the layout goes I don't know what. So these problems don't exist when you work with something like Markdown. And then with the GitHub, you can very easily you just push and pull your file to the repository, so it's online. And then before you start working, you get it from there, and it's the latest version. And you can easily work with 10 people using that as like the sharing environment for your files. So that's also a tool that kind of accommodates collaborative working. But apart from that, I've been talking also with quite some people about it, because it was a new experience to me. Just the whole more like social functioning of such a working group. It's really, really difficult, because in the end, people are writing their texts, and there has to be someone who has the latest call, the last call. That's I don't know if we will ever get past that, but maybe you have other ideas. It was really, it's like, I don't know if you know about book sprints, but those are like events where a group of people come together for like 4 days and they write a book in 4 days. And I think even there, which is like collaborative and equal to the max, in the end you need some kind of final editor who takes responsibility for making a whole of the book. But
I see.
do you agree?
And I agree. I really agree. And what about the designers? How did they receive the idea of working, like adding the pictures you showed us? How do the designers receive the concept of working on these tools? Like working on, do you have
Well,
some sort of training? Do they discuss something beforehand? How can you show this to them?
Well, that was a nice thing of working together in these work groups. And for example, for the INC work group, um, we worked with Silvio. He lives in Italy, and Michael lives in Brussels, so that's in Belgium. So what we did was we came together one day every month, and we had the whole day, and we just sat together, and it was like a mini hackathon. And we just showed each other what we were doing, and we could discuss then and there, and that really worked. So when it comes to collaborative working or writing, that was also really something that fitted like the meaning of the project, but it also really worked and helped us a lot in getting things done. So I think exactly because it's so important when you are doing this hybrid stuff that you have to have a little bit of everything in yourself. So I really had to learn how to work the command line. I mean, I'd
Yeah.
never done that before. So now I'm a little bit of a computer programmer. And then I had to learn how to deliver a file to a designer so she can do something with it for her part. So I also have to be a little bit of a designer. So I think that's also part of the hybrid workflow, is that of course, everyone has his or her specialty, but you have to be able to kind of get into the shoes of the other persons also working with you to really make it flow, I guess. So, and for us, it was the way to achieve that was to just sit together on one
Yes.
big table and work together.
I see, not a complete online environment, just some
No,
meetings. Yeah,
no. On the contrary, yeah. But of course, also with a project like this, with this many people collaborating, there were also people who turned out to be not that interested. So we had some people who were more on the side watching what the others did because you know they really wanted to keep doing stuff in the old way. Well,
I see.
they can do that, and others were really interested. So those are then the people who really contributed most to the project. So
I see. And what about, you said you worked together with some smaller publishers,
yeah.
right? And you said that there are some difficulties for them to accept the new formats. I believe there is something. You said the economics way, the book market is something, but you said that's not
Mm.
your concern about it, right? At
Mm.
this moment. But what about the other things? Do they believe their workflow was already fit to move to something different? What are the things they think might not work with this new idea of digital publishing? How they face this idea? Do you have some example, something you can say to us about a circumstance, something that happened that shows us how do these smaller book publishers face this idea?
Yes, well, I think that the business side of the issue is very important.
Yeah.
It's just that we're not really experts on the business side, but that is something that really came out all the time from the publishers that they just wanted to know more about how do I sell this ebook when it's
Yeah.
there, and how do I keep people from
Copying it.
illegally, yeah. So I guess that's also maybe the fear that is there for making a transition towards ebooks is, once you go electronic, then you are also in this whole market of piracy. And yeah, do you want to do that? But on the other hand, if you don't do it, what will happen then? It's really, yeah, I don't know. I think it demands a really also change in your mindset, and that can
Yeah,
be kind of frightening, of course.
of course.
But we had one other project which was really with a really nice outcome, of one of the arts publishers, and what came out of their research was something totally different from a book, actually, because it was a book about the Stedelijk Museum. So it's a museum for modern art in Amsterdam. And they have this really huge book with 500 highlights from the collection.
Wow.
So it's like a catalog. And they wanted to make that into an ebook. So very quickly it was obvious that it wouldn't happen, because you can't have 500 like really high quality images in an ebook that people can keep on their phone. Just really simple. It can't be. So they started thinking about, what can we do then with all this content that we have that is so, interesting, and people are interested in it. And they came up with something that kind of resembles the personal EPUB I was mentioning. So it's more like an app for your phone, and you
I
can
see.
browse through these 500 artworks from the catalog, and you choose the ones you like most, or the ones you want to know more about, or whatever. And you download your personal selection of the highlights from the museum. So the app is also called My Highlights. And then you have something totally different from the initial idea of we want to have these 500 artworks in an ebook. Now you have something that really engages the reader. You can also just pick one, or you can see how much fits on your phone and pick 500. I don't know.
I see.
And it even had a checkout system inside. So you pay per article. So if you take one article, you pay, I don't know, €2, and then it adds up. So it also had a new kind of revenue model built in that.
Oh, that's
So that's
interesting. And what about quicker productions like magazines? Have you ever experienced this workflow with something that you have some monthly production, something quicker in the production? Do you have some experience using the toolkit for it?
No, unfortunately not. We had one arts magazine which would be a part of the project, but it didn't happen. So we do want to pursue this exactly with our project about criticism, because the art critics are, well, um, most of the time, or at least a lot, writing for magazines. So we have a whole consortium now with arts magazines in the Netherlands and Belgium, and we want to try and work with them on, yeah, making that happen. But we have a little part in our publication about magazines, and I think it's really the question about, do you want to keep your magazine like a magazine, or are you just going to make it a blog or a website?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's true.
so
Oh, thank you a lot. Thank you a lot.
thanks.
Hi, I want to do a question by myself.
Yes.
I'm a professor in design course here,
Mm-hmm.
and while you were talking, I didn't understand it very well. But you still using InDesign for layout? Is that the final layout? Which is the
Yeah,
tool? Yeah, right. The
yeah, for the print
of
book.
yeah, to
Yeah.
create the final layout, you still have to use InDesign, right?
Well, we do. Do you have a better option? Because we would really like to kind of.
No, no, that's the point. You know, we actually kind of have alternatives here, and
Mm.
Lucas is one of them. But
Okay.
uh, the thing is, we find very complicated for the designers students to find tools where they
I
can.
cannot hear you
Uh,
now very clearly.
sorry,
Sorry.
now it's better.
Yeah.
Uh, we cannot find efficient tools where the designers can actually, create the layouts to produce the tools in digital world.
Yeah.
Of course, InDesign is doing that, but for example, if we actually want to add like a gesture to roll a page,
Mm-hmm.
InDesign does not help for doing this
Mm.
in the final file. So, have you
Yeah.
crossed for this kind of problems in your publishings?
Yes, but I think, well, I'm not a designer, so it's a bit tough question for me to answer. But at least for our changing workflow, which we developed for the INC, InDesign is still there. So InDesign is still used to go to the printer. I do know of a tool which is called Pressbooks. I don't know if you've heard of it,
No, I
but
didn't.
it's more an online tool, and it's primarily focused at making ebooks. But I think, if I understood correctly, you can also from this ebook export to a PDF which could be printed, but probably it's not really designed in that case.
Okay. Yeah, it's just kind of wondering, but you have the same problems we have here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I want to say thank you because it's good to know that some people are passing for the same problems as us. I guess. And somebody else has a question, a specific? No. Well, Pablo, do you want to ask me something? No. So it's okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And for your explanation of the project.
Yes, and I mean, you can always contact us if you want to be in touch, or you want to add something to our research, or if you want the book or whatever you want. So we are really
Yeah,
happy to hear.
I think we have some people here that are interested in making projects together. So we're
Yeah,
probably gonna get in contact soon,
yeah, that would be nice.
and probably contribute to your research for sure.
Yeah, that would be nice. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye bye. Good night.
Bye.
Lembrei muito dos Brunos. É um macaco mesmo, tá vendo? Eu lembrei muito deles. Isso.